Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. If you want an example of how to piss away your talent, look no further than Adrien Broner. I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, but Broner is now 33. He wasted his prime years through inactivity and ill discipline. At one point, he was looking like he could be a superstar. If you go back to his sort of lightweight days, and he did have a few extremely good, extremely impressive victories. I think his performance against Antonio DeMarco in 2012 was really impressive. He looked really good against a very good opponent. DeMarco at the time, I think, only had a couple of defeats and was the WBC. Was he the WBC champ? I think he was. Yes, he was WBC. And Broner stopped him in 8 rounds and looked very, very impressive doing it. That was a lightweight. Then I think he fought Gavin Rees, which was a sort of 5-round knockover job. But then he jumped up a couple of weights and eked out a victory over Paulie Malignaggi, which was controversial. I mean, I thought it was very, very close. I can't remember. I think it was one of those fights where a draw wouldn't have been a bad idea. But he beat Malignaggi on a split decision and took that was his welterweight belt. So he jumped up a couple of divisions. And the rumours of ill discipline started there. And then, of course, he went on, and that's when things got sort of bad for him, because his following fight, he fought Marcus Maidana and got floored twice. And I have never seen such joy at someone who showed that much courage in a fight, because Broner did hang tough in that fight. He's a tough guy when he wants to be. I've never seen so much joy at a fighter who is that much of a warrior losing. People were delighted when Maidana beat Broner, because Broner had come across as being completely obnoxious out of the ring. And then, he won a decision over Carlos Molina and Emmanuel Taylor. He beat him on points. It became, up at the higher weights, light welterweight, it became a points thing until he ran into Sean Porter. He knocked Porter down in the 12th round with a big left hook that would have, kept most people down. Porter, tough guy, got up and won a decision. And then there were another few, knockout jobs. Ashley Theophane was one, wasn't it? 9 rounds, he stopped him in. And I can't remember the age. Granados was one. Was that a draw? No, it wasn't, was it? Jesse Vargas was the draw. He lost to Mikey Garcia, he got lost to Pacquiao. So his career petered out. And then if you look at recent years, he fought once in 2021 against Giovanni Santiago and won a 12-round decision. And looked to me like, you could make a case for Santiago winning that fight, certainly. And the Pacquiao fight was 2019. So since 2019, so in the last 4 years, he's fought once. Well, his career isn't over, apparently. Do you know why? Because there was news today, this is funny, there was news today that he has signed with none other than Don King. Yes, that Don King. Is he 90, 91? What is he now, Don King? I don't know. And if you're a fighter, the person you don't sign with is Don King. For 2 reasons. Number one, if you've seen Don King's recent shows, which are about as rare as Halley's Comet, you will know that they take place in what looks like school gymnasiums, and they have obscure fighters on there, people who are constantly recycled. You never heard of them. Mostly heavyweights, like Bermain Stavern was one of them. And the production value, that he hasn't got a TV deal, as far as I know. I don't think so. Maybe with one of the minor internet channels, or the streaming service or something. I don't know. But the shows have been amateurish, to say the least. And if you're old like me, you will remember those big, 5 world title fights in wherever it was, LA or New York. He'd have these massive shows. The years when he was promoting Mike Tyson. If you go back before Tyson, you go back to the 80s heavyweights, with Witherspoon and Tony Tubbs and Greg Page and John Tate and all that lot. Mike Weaver was another one. Now, Larry Holmes, of course, King had something to do with him. Now, the second reason that no one should ever sign with Don King is that he has literally decades and decades of proof of how he treats his fighters, which can be summed up in one sentence: he rips them off. All right? I remember when Frank Bruno fought Tim Witherspoon, and Witherspoon was brought to Britain, and his purse was, I think, 1.5 million at the time. This was, I can't remember, when was the Bruno fight? 87, something like 86, 87. Witherspoon, of the 1.5 million, Carl King, by the way, Don's son, was Witherspoon's manager, and Don was the promoter. No conflict of interest there, is there? Of the 1.5 million, Witherspoon walked away with $33,000. It was all expenses and deductions and costs, and $33,000 for coming to Britain to fight Frank Bruno and knocking him out. And was it his following fight? He got chinned by Bone Crusher in one round, and he said afterwards, he said, I didn't care. I'd been ripped off. I had no money, and he sued King, and I think there was eventually a payout, a settled out of court thing. Ask any heavyweight from the 80s about Don King, Pinkland Thomas, and all these fighters. They'll say, I never got paid what I should have done. Mike Tyson paid tens of millions, supposedly. How much of it did he actually see? And this doesn't stop with fighters. King has, had issues with Bob Arum. Not that I consider Bob Arum to be much better than King, morally. You take Frank Warren. In the 90s, King he teamed up with Warren. Probably the most famous co-production was Nigel Benn and Gerald McClellan, which is, to this day, is my all-time favourite fight. It's the fight that I could barely breathe watching that fight. It was so absolutely enthralling and exhausting to watch because it was just so incredible. But that was a co-production. And I remember Warren. I remember there was lots of criticism about King. This is typical Warren, by the way. Lots of criticism about King. Oh, he rips fighters off and blah, blah. And I remember Frank Warren writing to Boxing News in the 90s, and they published his letter. This was his letter. This wasn't an article. And he said, he listed all the amounts of money about how much so-and-so was paid, how much, 10 million here, 5 million there. All these fighters have never been paid better than by Don King. That was Warren, because Warren was his business partner. And then a couple of years later, Warren was sued in court by King, and King walked away. I think it was 950 grand, was it, around that amount? So King don't care who he's with, who he's taking money off. He'll rip everyone off. I have a friend, not a friend, an acquaintance, I suppose, she's an American lady, and she's a criminal profiler. And we were once talking about this, and she said, this is how she phrased it, Don King displays all the traits of a psychopath, which is true. Because if you ever read about psychopathy, or you've ever dealt with psychopaths, and I've done a bit of both, you'll know, you can see it. There's psychopathy, that complete lack of empathy for anyone, that lack of humanity, I suppose, or what we would term humanity. Almost a lack of a soul. And I'm not someone who believes in the concept of a soul, but there's just an emptiness there, and King displays it, and of course he hides it like most psychopaths do behind bluster, behind a lot of rhetoric, great proclamations of greatness. He uses all the buzzwords. He's a typical sort of psychotic or psychopathic politician type, and he's got away with it for decades and decades. So along comes Broner, the dopey sod. I had one fight in 4 years, and there's a picture now of him and Broner, King and Broner, sitting down with a big table full of money. This was just like when Rockman beat Lewis, knocked him out, and Rockman was promoted by what was his name? The South African fella. Can't remember his bloody name. And King met with Rockman with a big hold all of money and said, "Here, this is your money if you sign with me." So he signed with him. Same thing. Here's look at this ton of money I can give you. Here, it's yours. And thank you very much. Yeah, I'll sign with you. And the next thing you know, you're being ripped off. And Don King, man, he's incorrigible. And people are still signing. You've got to be dopier than dog dung to sign with this guy. I mean, look at Zab. I remember seeing an interview with Zab Judah. And they asked him about this. Why the hell did you sign with Don King? Are you crazy? And he said, well, you always think you're going to be the one that's not going to get ripped off. You're going to put certain legal things in place and protect yourself. Don is very, very well schooled in navigating his way through the choppy waters of legalities. He can do that. He's done it for decades. And if you don't pay, or look at Daniel Dubois last year fighting in some school gymnasium, leisure centre, or whatever the hell it was. I don't think he's been paid yet. And King said, well, I'm not paying him because his promoter, Frank Warren, owes me money. Like, that's got anything to do with Daniel Dubois. He probably owes him money from the 90s. Maybe it was that 950 grand he got sued for. But this is just because a court says you're owed so. This is just because you've got a contract. And, you know, even if there's a dispute, you take it to court. Just because they say, well, you have to pay this, there's ways around it. There's ways around it. You could declare bankruptcy. I believe Warren has done that. Was that the Calzaghe thing? I could be wrong about that. He's declared, and you just start up a new company. You know, everything is weighted. The power and is weighted to the people who have money in law. The little guy, or the employee, if you like, very, very rarely are they the ones that are in the primary position. Are they the ones that are considered first? It's very, very rare. So Broner, we all know he's an absolute tit. You know, he's the things he gets up to out of the ring. He's just he's not very bright at all. No wonder Al Heyman got rid of him. I mean, Heyman did him loads of favours, paid him good money, and about billions. Now it's not about billions, mate. It's about trying to scrape enough to pay your bills now, I'm afraid. There was a video many years ago of Broner ripping up was it a $20 bill? What's this insignificant money? Get it out. And he's ripping it up and chucking it down a Kazi. I won't go ripping up any more money, mate, because very soon you ain't going to have any of it. But what do you think about this? I just think it's funny. Really, really funny. Don King signing Broner. You know, if ever there was a lamb to the slaughter, it's that. And there's life in the old goat yet, in the King, 1991, whatever the fuck he is. I mean, it's amazing, but yeah. Anyway, what do you think? Leave your comments below. Good old Don King's still around. Yeah, thanks for subscribing. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. It helps us out as well. I hope you liked the video. Thanks for your time, and we'll speak again soon. Bye for now.